003. Speaking of outstanding local music and musicians, I am pleased to introduce Mr. Danny Romero, Chino Valley resident. Welcome to the studio, Danny. How are you?
I'm good, Matt. Thank you. I appreciate it.
I've known Danny for a few years since I moved out here. I believe it was in 04, 05 that we met. Got a chance to listen to you just tear it up at some local venues. Tell our listeners that don't know you, although I'm sure most of them do, you've been a staple in the local music scene in Yavapai County and throughout Arizona. How do you classify your music?
Rebel Billy. That's kind of what I call it. It's a fusion, I guess, of the punk rock that I grew up with and Hank Williams Sr. and Jr., and even some of the kind of the Stones that my dad raised me on, and the Beatles. So there's, I think it's very interesting. Every musician has a background in music that you never think they would. And
what was some of the punk that you listened to coming up?
Social Distortion was by far. Mike Ness is my favorite singer-songwriter. Him and Hank Williams for me is about it.
Now, when people think punk, they think of mid and late 70s.
Right.
A lot of English and East Coast, and then it went in the 80s into some West Coast.
Right.
But deep down, and I've heard you just tear up some Johnny Cash live.
Right.
He was kind of an early Western punk.
Right. Absolutely. He definitely was blurring those lines a long time ago. And that's the beauty of a guy like Johnny Cash. His music lives on. I mean, he's such a staple in Americana, and I think it is because he fused so well, so many different things all in one. They didn't know really what to call it.
What to do with them.
Right.
Well, you get a great reception out here anytime you play, and you also play with Sky. Give us a little bit. First, Sky's not in the studio with us today, but tell us a little bit about your relationship with him, how you guys came to play together, and how you met. Right.
Well, Sky is a very dear friend of mine. He's one of my best friends, and of course, he, locally he's
Cromwell, right?
Conwell, yeah. Locally, he's known as Sky Daddy, and him and I met about 15 years ago when I just started to sing and play, and we met through a bass player who was wanting to put something together, and a practice in Prescott Valley led to, and my influence of Elvis and true 50s rockabilly, true 50s rock and roll, and which is what he loves and what he's really evolved. Well, not necessarily evolved, he's always been, but what he is known for today. We had that connection a long time ago. And, I got sick 3 years ago, contracted a very deadly bacteria, necrotizing fasciitis. And it took me a couple of years to recover from that. And about a little over a year ago, Sky and I we connected one more time, and since it's off the hook. Him and I play so much, and it's mostly acoustic music.
Now, when you came back after your sickness, it was a welcome back. It was a Danny redo tour.
Right.
For those of you that don't know Danny's story, we want to talk mainly music right now, but Google Danny Romero, check locally at the Daily Courier archives. Right. They did some good pieces on him. But one of the things, when you contracted that sickness, how did you do it? What were you doing?
Well, at that point in time,
you were working the ranch, right?
Yeah, I was cowboying for a living. I have a contracting business, an electrical contracting business, Build-In Electric LLC. I've had that since 2005. Right.
The reason,
but I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Danny. Go ahead.
No. I had been cowboying because the economy had fallen apart.
The reason I brought that up is because you were out there cowboying.
Right.
For some musicians, especially when they reach a certain plateau, they kind of get a persona. Oh, I'll be country this week. I'll be hip hop. I'll be rockabilly. This is your roots.
Right. Yeah.
This is not I went out and bought a nice vintage hat.
No.
This is you.
Right.
The real deal.
Right. And, I think that comes across in songs that I've written and just my whole attitude. I've always been very rebellious, and I think, I think that's where a lot of the punk rock that I grew up with comes through my music, but also, the reality of who I am. It's not an image. People think, well, I noticed they'll always tell me, well, I saw you kind of limping. We just figured you got, it was a bull that did it to you. I said, I never rode bulls. I rode broncs. I never rode bulls. But, I cowboyed for a long time. And, that is who I am.
Yeah.
And it exudes through the pores of my skin.
And for those of you that have not heard Danny and Sky Daddy and Arizona Territory play, it comes through when we're watching you play, when we're listening to you play in these small little places.
Sure.
Now, we're going to give Danny a moment to pull out his guitar because we're not going to let him out of here without playing something. And while
Thank you, Matt.
getting that, I'm going to let everybody know every Tuesday from noon to 2 p.m., Danny and Sky play an acoustic set at the Palace Hotel and Ballroom in right on Whiskey Row in Prescott. And then Danny does a solo show every Friday from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Don't miss out on that. If you are near downtown Prescott on Whiskey Row, go to the Palace Tuesdays at noon, Fridays at 5 to hear some of the best music in the world. I'm looking at this guitar. This guitar has seen a day or two, has it not? Danny also plays any private and corporate gigs.
Sure.
If you want, Danny Romero Music, all one word, DannyRomeroMusic.com. He can also be reached in the 928 area code, 928-925-4395. And now to the appreciation of everybody within listening distance, I'm going to be quiet. We're going to let Danny lead us into a song. What are you going to play for us, Danny?
I'm going to play a song that I wrote for my mother. She's been gone 11 years now. And I guess I always say that I wrote it for her about me, but for me about her. So it's called Mama Raised an Outlaw, and it's definitely a fusion of the punk rock and the old school country music that I grew up on. So here we go. Mama raised an outlaw, doing things ain't no one ever saw. Mama raised an outlaw, unrefined, jagged-edged and raw. Back in 1995, running through the desert far and wide. Ain't so sure on where I've been, taking in my life of sin. Been tripped up a time or two, doing what I ain't supposed to do. Playing with my hillbilly band, you never know where I land. Mama raised an outlaw, doing things ain't no one ever saw. Mama raised an outlaw, unrefined, jagged-edged and raw. Yeah, raising hell in them honky-tonks, drinking something I ain't bought. Picked a fist fight or two, but I always fought my way through. Cranked up on AC/DC, running so fast, never catch me. I bucked the bridle once or twice. Yeah, don't mess with me, I ain't nothing nice. 'Cause mama raised an outlaw, doing things ain't no one ever saw. Mama raised an outlaw, unrefined, jagged-edged and raw. Yeah, it goes out to my mama, man.
Outstanding, Danny. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
For those
man.
of you that you can't miss seeing Danny live. Again, Tuesdays from noon to 2 at the Palace Hotel and Ballroom.
Right.
And Fridays, Danny solo, 5 to 8, also at the Palace. Reach out to him, 928-925-4395, DannyRomeroMusic.com. And I had the treat of watching the lovely and talented Bill Monroe do a little jig here in the studio. It was great to watch.
Oh, wow, how cool.
And me here without singles.
Wow. Wow.
We want to thank you, Danny, to come in.
Absolutely.
I'm going to encourage folks, too, when they go out and watch you live, take a minute between sets, talk to Danny. He's got some great stories. We can't begin to scratch the surface.
Thank you, Matt.
You've got a budding movie career coming, too. We're running on time, but
sure.
What are some of the things we can look for you?
Right. Well, I've done a little bit of acting since my amputation, and I've done a lot of Western acting in an actual prop peg leg. And yes, I do. The third installment of Hot Bath and a Stiff Drink. Jeffrey Patterson, a producer, actor out of L.A., is very accomplished. Third installment to begin filming next February, Old Tucson and Mescal Studios, Southern Arizona.
Great. Again, thank you for coming in. It was such a treat.
Thank you,
Go out
Matt.
and see Danny play live. Get a hold of him to play your events, corporate, weddings, family, whatever you can use.